The second prequel spin-off of Game of Thrones, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, is set in 209 AC, around 90 years before the events in GOT. This means that in the overall franchise timeline, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is actually set right between the main series and the first prequel, House of the Dragon, which in turn takes place 200 years before GOT. Yet while A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms bridges the gap between GOT and HOTD, its place in the timeline means that it will cover quite a different era of Westeros. The first season of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is based on the first novella in George R.R. Martin's three-part Dunk and Egg series, a short story called The Hedge Knight. The story follows Ser Duncan the Tall, Dunk, and his squire, Egg, and, spoiler alert, Egg is later revealed to be Aegon V Targaryen, a future king of Westeros. The tale begins during the reign of King Daeron II Targaryen in 209 AC, a time when dragons are already extinct, but the Targaryens still rule the kingdom. The hero of the story, Dunk, is a low-born orphan who becomes a hedge knight. He stumbles into a tournament at Ashford and meets Egg, disguised as a stable boy to hide in the crowd. But after a deadly conflict with Prince Aegon Targaryen, Egg's true identity is revealed. Dunk and Egg are taken in by Egg's family, Egg chooses Dunk as his knight, and they begin their journey across Westeros. That's where The Hedge Knight ends, but the story continues in the succeeding two novellas, The Sworn Sword and The Mystery Knight. And notably, HBO plans to adapt these two novellas for the next two seasons of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. Over time, Dunk becomes a legendary figure, known for both his imposing size and heroism. And meanwhile, Egg grows into a wise and just ruler, eventually inheriting the Iron Throne as King Aegon V, about 20 years after the events of the novellas. Although it's unknown exactly when Dunk joined the Kingsguard, it's presumed that this happened shortly after Egg's coronation, which we may see in A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. Their story ends at the tragedy at Summerhall in 259 AC, a mysterious fire that killed Dunk, Egg, and many others. And notably, Game of Thrones begins around 40 years after the Summerhall fire. Egg's son, Jaehaerys II, ruled only briefly, but his son was Aerys II, who grew up to become the Mad King, was killed during Robert's Rebellion, and was survived by his children Daenerys and Rhaegar. In short, Egg, aka Prince Aegon, is actually the great-grandfather of Daenerys Targaryen. And notably, Egg was also the older brother of Maester Aemon from The Wall. Meanwhile, although Dunk has no known blood relation to any GOT characters, he's quite comparable to Brienne of Tarth or even Jon Snow, except Dunk lived in an era before Westeros fully descended into chaos. So, how else do you think A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms will connect to either Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon? Tell us in the comments, and thanks for watching ScreenRant.